all. Welcome to another edition of What's News in Healthcare Social Media. I'm Kathy Brown of Brown Knows Social Media, and today's guest is the world-renowned Todd Hartley. Would you like to say hello, Todd?
Hi everyone, Kathy. It's such a joy to be back on. I feel ownership here, or I feel like I'm family. So it's really nice to be back.
Well, you are family, Todd, and it is great to have you back. You've been off and doing all kinds of other interviews and hangouts on air. I've seen you all around, so I'm looking forward to having you back into discussions with me today to talk about what's news in healthcare social media.
Awesome. So there's a lot of really cool things that are going on in the news. I think the first big story that we have on our list today, and Kathy and I are open to, if you've got a question that comes up during this conversation, feel free to post it and we'll keep monitoring it throughout the conversation today. But there's a big story out of hospitalimpact.org about digital job shift that could impact hospitals and social media. The story's really interesting. It's talking about how, social media has been around for X number of years, and now these jobs and these positions are maturing, and there's a big sea change taking place. And that's going to mean that there's going to be a lot of changes happening in the marketplace. Kathy, what do you see about this story that's impactful?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that there is likely going to be a shift in people looking for jobs, not only because these positions have lasted long enough for people to get tired of them, but because the positions are changing. And if we're not changing with it and we're not offering the excitement and the allure that some of these new jobs are offering and giving people a chance to do something that's a little more current, then we're going to start losing our people. And there was an article that was shared in Healthcare Talk recently, and it was, I forget who shared it, but it was 9 emerging job titles for healthcare executives. And I personally wanted number 4, Chief Experience Officer and Patient Engagement Officer, because I thought that sounded like a really intriguing title that if I was working for someone else and I was getting bored with what I was doing and I wanted something innovative, I would look for a job titled something like that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to me because I read this article and I understand that there's a job shift happening. As the CEO of a video marketing agency, I also recognize that there are job shifts that are happening every single day. So the people that I think should be concerned about job changes or job shifts are people that aren't willing or interested in innovating or being on the cutting edge. And to be successful in social media, you don't have to be the smartest person in your industry. Being the smartest is a birth blessing, and that only happens to one of us. And I am willing to admit it wasn't me. But if you're committed to being great, which I recommend everybody do, you have to be the most resourceful. And you have to be eager to learning from others, watching hangouts that Kathy's doing, reading the latest trades. And in doing so, you'll start picking up tips and tricks, and people in your industry will look at you as being a really bright light. Long-term job sustainability, all those things are vital. And I think it starts with conversations like Kathy is having every week right here on Google+.
Well, I think another important point is that everyone has their own uniqueness. Everyone can be creative in their own way, and that's what makes social media successful. So if we can find ways to tap into the best traits of all of the people working in our communications department, they all have unique skills, and that is where we can excel as a whole.
Yep, I totally agree. If we go back to my career 7 years ago, I was just starting to dabble into the video space. I was starting to see the market trends and where Google was headed. And as a video marketer, I knew that or as a digital marketer, I knew that that was an open and ripe territory for me to bring my digital marketing background into this new developing niche. So always be on the lookout and always look at what your weaknesses are and spend time every single day investing on developing it. I'm the guy at the gym who's doing cardio that's reading on his iPad all the latest stories. Kathy, my wife and I went to dinner one night and we were walking out of the restaurant and a guy said to his wife or his date, "That's the guy who reads at the gym." And so that's what it takes to be the most resourceful. Kathy, anything else on this topic before we move into wearable tech?
Well, the last thing I want to say to people is if you haven't revisited your job descriptions lately, consider giving them a fresh look. Ask the people who are doing these positions to take a look at their job descriptions and bring them up to date, because I think it's not only important to have those positions updated in case you have an unexpected opportunity to fill it, but because it's important to recognize what truly is taking place with that job description. So that's my takeaway from this for today. And I wanted to go into the next article, which is the Google I/O conference. And Todd, did you participate? Did you attend the Google I/O conference?
You know what? I was really close to going, but I had a client meeting. By the way, I've just popped the story up, but it moved. So, okay, there it goes. So, I was interested in going. I followed it, Kathy, online and read everything that came out of Google I/O that would be relevant to my clients. And really, what we're seeing is uh, Google's laying out its big path. Coming up later on, Kathy and I are going to talk about where Google's headed and how you can profit from it. So stay tuned for that. And I don't want to steal any thunder because a lot of it came out of Google I/O, and I want to help you make sense of it. And Kathy has some really brilliant insights on that area also. But talking about this wearable tech and where Google's headed, Ellie Powers, she's the Google product manager, and I think we need to do a hangout on air with her because of where health trackable wearables are headed and how that fits into the social conversation in healthcare that we have here every week is really going to be vital, Kathy.
Yeah, I was hoping to have Cecilia, one of the other Google Glass leaders, come join us today, and something has happened with her schedule that she wasn't able to jump in and be in this conversation. But there is so much happening in wearables, and wearables is so much more than just monitoring your heart now or watching how long you run. There's going to be so much integration. And Google I/O really launched this big time this week. And if you haven't seen what they talked about and you're interested in it, it is in recorded form. You can go out and watch the small snippets. And it's very exciting how the watches are going to, everything is going to be location and context based. So if we can think now of how we want to communicate with people based on where they are, what they're doing, what they've shared, and what we know about them at that point in time, we can begin to really take advantage of the technology as it develops over time.
Yeah, it's a really good point. What we saw out of Google I/O is Google's Android platform. It's going to get the same kind of life metric tracking that Apple's I/O users are going to get from iOS 8 with the Health Kit. And this is really going to be rolled out at the same time that Apple's going to be rolling out the iPhone 6 and also their other products. So they teased it at the Apple conference at WWDC, and so Google responded, and with their own software, and then the Fit initiative is really a platform for devices and manufacturers, and they're going to try to get these to interface, and they're going to be interfacing with the Android devices and platform, and I'm looking forward to seeing how really large companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield are going to take advantage of healthcare companies consolidating our health tracking information that comes from our wearables, how that's going to provide better service. Like if you look at what's happening with Apple, the wearable tech is a partnership through with the Mayo Clinic, and so if you have a Mayo Clinic facility or a Mayo Clinic doc and you're wearing it and the device notices that you're having a heart issue, it'll ping your doctor and they'll work on getting you in. Now that's really cool if you happen to be in one of the, I believe, 4 locations where there's a Mayo Clinic. I literally drive by one every day, so it'd be ideal for people in my area. But for a vast majority of the country, that isn't ready for prime time or even a viable option. And that's where the Google I/O announcement and where Google's open source Android platform is really going to be impactful. So I'm interested, Kathy, and it's going to be really cool to see what Ellie Powers and the other rock stars at Google are planning on taking this.
Well, let's play some what if here, because I think that it's really exciting. The ability to get that kind of information. The fact that wearables are bringing us more insights into our market is really exciting. And so if anybody's wondering, why are we talking about gadgets, why are we talking about technology, it's because technology is bringing information that allows us to market and communicate with patients more effectively. And when you were talking about driving by, well, if people are driving by a practice, and let's say you're a system that has multiple hospitals and multiple practices and multiple physicians, to be able to think ahead now of what you're going to do when, for example, when Google Maps starts giving real-time traffic and real-time where you are and promotions having to do with what you're passing by, how would you utilize that to drive people to your practices, to your physicians, to your hospitals? One of the thoughts that I had was, at flu season time, could you possibly have something that eventually will pop up on the dashboard of your car, because Google has said that they're wanting to interface smartphones with the dashboards of cars. So imagine being able to locate somebody who's driving by your facility and remind them that it's flu season, and if they haven't gotten their flu shot, they can come in and get one. Those are some really simple things that people appreciate.
Really simple. I gotta be real candid with you. I have a really low threshold for irritability, and I think that would drive me crazy to be driving around and like, hey, get a flu shot, bam, on your dash or in that display. But I do think there's going to be really cool applications. Let me give you an idea. In 2008, I found out while doing interviews for the first video medical encyclopedia on the internet that I created, that I had an irregular heart rhythm. It would have been totally obvious, Kathy, if you saw me dance, that I had an irregular rhythm. But I got that fixed. With wearable tech, those devices, in theory, should be able to tell me long before a doctor discovers it that I have an irregular rhythm and could guide me to a Google map of specialists in my area that provide that service. And that would be a really nice application to be very preventative, long before it turns into a serious heart ailment, to be able to go and take corrective action like I had. And there's going to be those kind of situations. Somebody's going to have a blood pressure issue. Somebody's going to have their body temperature is going to go off, or their sleep patterns are going to trigger a sleep apnea specialist. And we're going to be streamlined into corrective action before it becomes long-term problems. Super exciting. And this really lays out the big path of how you, and I'm friends with the team at Google, the wearable venture capitalists, and what they're building is phenomenal, Kathy. And I know you're familiar with it also, so it's a really cool time to be a digital geek in the health space.
Definitely. Well, and along the same lines, let's talk about some of the things that people are using right now. There was an article in iHealthBeat, and it's titled "More Hospitals Offering Online Scheduling to Reduce ED Wait Times." And I'm curious, Todd. I know what you said. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's a really interesting topic. Most importantly, I have mixed emotions about it. And my mixed emotions are, it's really cool that you can use a device to schedule an emergency room appointment, and that they'll tell you when the proper time to come in is. But my mixed emotion is the emergency room are for people who can't wait and aren't dealing with emergencies. And so I would rather see the device, a lot of these hospitals have medical groups that they work with. And we all know that on this conversation that if you send somebody that's dealing with a non-emergency into the emergency room for like a flu or something, and they go there and clog up that path, it costs significantly more. I'd rather see that application ping people to go to a urgent care through the medical group and keep that money inside of the system instead of having them pay 5 times more to go see a doctor in the emergency room. So that's my mixed emotions about it, because I'm not sure if hospitals would make that change, because hospitals do appreciate being able to charge a premium for that space. But for the people like you and I who are in an insurance group that aren't in the hospital at 4 a.m., we end up having to pay for that person that could have saw somebody at a less expensive facility. So I don't think this problem's ever going to really get worked out, but I'd love to see it get worked out, Kathy.
Well, one of our viewers, Scott Scowcroft, made mention of remember the Dick Tracy watch. So, and I'm
Right.
picturing that whole thing with the Dick Tracy watch. So maybe we don't want to make it too easy and too convenient for people in the ER, but let's take that into the rest of the hospital, or take it into the practice. I can see where there would be some good possibility to make patients more satisfied. Patient satisfaction is important. Right. By providing some of those nice amenities, like we're running late, but we're going to text you when we're about 15 minutes away or 30 minutes away, or whatever that is. If people, I know that I've been in the hospital before where I was waiting for a test here and I was waiting for something there, or even waiting for a loved one to get a test. And it would be nice if I had been able to go to the cafeteria and grab that lunch before the cafeteria closed, and know that if I got a text, I had a 10-minute warning or something, that I could continue what I needed to do rather than waiting around not knowing if it was 1 minute or 1 hour.
Right. It's a really good point, and that's a really smart application here. And the game has become patient satisfaction and getting increased reimbursement because of the way patients respond. I see 6 or 7 really smart strategic opportunities for hospitals in this type of application to boost up patient satisfaction. I'll give you one right now. A patient is in the waiting room for, let's say, some type of condition, okay? It doesn't matter what it is. While they're waiting, the system is really easy to build out. We've already built out similar tools where the patient would get an email that says, you're 30 minutes out. Here's a video about one of our rockstar ER doctors, or if it's a chest issue, like maybe asthma or something, here's the doctor talking about the latest information about your specific condition. And that patient, while they're waiting, also has information on their phone that they can watch. The reality is, you go into an ER, you're engaging with a device like this, or a tablet of some kind. But people can't read on these things. The text is too small. I'm over 40. I'm friggin' blind if I look at this for 2 minutes for the rest of the day. And so if you got a video dropped in here, you could be promoting your services because you want to move somebody from ER into medical group or to specialist. And that's a savvy way of doing it.
That's a great point, Todd. Well, I want to move into another area of web design, not just medical web design, but web design in general. There was a great article that LA Times put out on why Healthcaregov or Healthcare.gov was failing, especially with the millennials. And my sons fall into that category. And when my oldest son was trying to work his way through Healthcare.gov, there were many explicatives coming from him because he said, this is not intuitive. I cannot figure this out. And he couldn't figure out, first of all, where to click to get things to work because they weren't following the standardizations that generation is used to. But then he was having problems being able to weed it down to what he wanted and what he didn't want. And that was one of the complaints that LA Times pointed out with this recent article. So go ahead, and Todd, and what is your thought on that?
My first thought is you have to remind your son that government only has one tool, and it isn't the art of creating intuitive user design. It just isn't. The only tool that government has is force, and it uses it to get people into the channels. And so that's how a system like Healthcare.gov gets built, but it is not user-friendly. In the private sector, you spend significant amount of time getting into the user experience and how to streamline it, and that's why companies like Yelp or Amazon really specialize in it because they look at the metrics, they understand the science behind conversion, and they streamline by doing a series of A versus B testing to determine which page keeps people moving through the funnel. None of that smart science happened in this, and as a result, nobody could convert. Big problem, and unfortunately, I, I think $1 billion was spent in total getting to that point. It's very sad for me to see because, for people like you and I, Kathy, that deal with this on a daily basis, it is common knowledge that you always start from a user experience perspective before you start building. So,
well, I don't know that that's always true, because here in healthcare, we have been forced to go down the path of patient portals long before we're ready to, and long before patients see value in it. And so a lot of hospitals are putting together the bare minimum to meet the requirements, but they aren't taking into account the needs and the desires of patients. And what's going to happen somewhere down the line is we're going to have a lot of patient portals that meet the first criteria, but they're not functional enough that patients will actually engage in them. And that's where I think having this article as an example of what not to do really does apply to patient portals. And marketing professionals should be getting in on those conversations in the very early stages to not allow these patient portals to go down the path of we'll just put something together for now and go revisit it later, because that later never comes.
yeah, you're right. I mean, look, that's a really important point. We're different here at Wirebuzz. Everything we do starts with strategy, because we need to know where our client's end position needs to be before we do any work. And it took me 14 or 15 years in the digital space before I started to realize, whoa, let's not build anything until we know what the end goal user experience is. The Healthcare.gov has also tells me something really important. It goes back to Google, and Google is really positioning for mobile device to be the primary and dominant way we engage with the internet. And that's because Google's already seen that they're inside of their analytics. It's funny to think that Google has their own analytics, but inside of their own Google Analytics, they will see that the people that are doing searches now are coming primarily from mobile devices. So Google's already flipped the script. Its primary customer is now mobile engagement, and Healthcare.gov didn't recognize that at all, because you have to streamline everything now if you want advanced search placement. And we'll get into this in a moment when we talk about Google I/O and where Google's headed and how to profit from it. But everything has to be streamlined for engaging through really minimal navigations and really intuitive flow. So I don't know. I mean, when I read this story out of the LA Times, Kathy, I felt nothing but embarrassment, because a lot of these things seem very foundational in our industry, and I wish them well. I think that the goal is noble. The strategy was poor, and that's what you get out of those things.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. Well, our last article, and before we get into this, I posted a link to our conversation live, so if any of you are watching and able to join the conversation for the last 15 minutes of our Hangout on Air, please feel free to follow that link and come in. Just make sure that you have stopped watching the video before you join, otherwise we're going to have an echo and I'll have to mute you. Our last article I just want to bring up because it's food for thought, and it was by ABC News. And they reported that a nurse lost her job after posting an Instagram post that was a picture of an empty ER room with things strewn about. And I'm trying to see if I can find the actual comment that she said. It was hashtag man versus six train. She took a picture that had already been shared on Instagram by a fellow physician.
And Kathy, I'm going to pop that photo up for you.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, there you go.
Well, that's the article. That's not the photo, but that's the article.
There's
down
the photo if I zoom in.
Yeah, scroll on down, and there. Oh, I see. She's got on the phone. Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's a picture, and she got this picture. She reshared this picture from a physician who had originally posted it, and then she added the hashtag. She was fired, not because of patient privacy. There was no patient information whatsoever. There was nothing that could indicate that she even remotely crossed the line with HIPAA, but she was fired for poor judgment. And it's really a sad story. This is a nurse who had, I think they said, 9 years on the job or something, and didn't see it coming. And the point that I want to make with this article is you may have some expectations that are outside of the HIPAA, the patient privacy rules. And are those being communicated in a way that you're not going to surprise someone when you discipline them for something that doesn't fall within those ranges? It's just a terrible story. And I think it could have been avoided. I'm still not sure. I'm not sure that I agree with it, but it doesn't
With the
matter whether I
firing, you're
agree
saying?
with it. Huh?
You don't agree with the firing?
Yeah, I don't. When I read it as a statement of the pointness of how quickly something like that can happen and how we we are just humans. I really didn't take that as distasteful at all, but I can understand that if that falls within the expectations of a hospital, it doesn't matter whether it agrees with me. The people who are there have to follow those expectations, assuming they've been communicated.
Yeah. I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence. I can be on your side. I could also look at the hospital and just say, and I probably lean more on the hospital side because my grandfather used to always say to me that it takes a lifetime to build your reputation and your credibility, and it takes a moment to take it all away. And for a hospital that's working on establishing its credibility, it takes one photo like that to make people question how professional they are. And I probably would have kicked that person to the curb or at least suspended them for a while, because that is showing that people that work there kind of think these things are funny or entertaining, and instead of life and death. And I have a problem with that.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on the humor of it, but again, I'm in that environment where I sometimes just making a statement is a way of handling something that's
Yeah.
otherwise very ugly. But
Yeah.
what I found interesting is that the physician was not disciplined, and yet that was the physician's picture that had been reshared.
Oh, the
That,
physician wasn't disciplined.
no, not at all.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah,
that's the embarrassing part of the story too, right?
I think it is. And just as I'm saying that, I see the comment that Janine Bevan was she was reminding us that the doc isn't reprimanded at all. And is it a double standard? That's a good question, because I think
It is.
whatever policies we have to apply them across the board, because how are people supposed to interpret them and understand them and follow them properly if they're not communicated? This would be a great article to bring up and have a discussion in your office to talk about the expectations right now so that there are no surprises. And so
Right.
someone who has been practicing for 9 years as a nurse isn't going to suddenly lose his or her job over something that they didn't see coming.
Right. That's a good point. Add it to your next business meeting, your team meeting. Have a quick little discussion about it. And by bringing it up in that conversation, you're exercising prevention, right? You're having people kind of walk through the steps to see what that would be like. And the next time they approach it, they can make a smart decision that doesn't embarrass the hospital. A really good point, Kathy. Can we take a moment about what is my favorite topic right now, which is it's a business topic. It's where is Google headed? And with that information, how can you make money from it? Can we talk about that?
Well, what do you mean by making money? I feel like an infomercial. What do you mean by making money from it,
But
Todd?
wait, there's more. Kathy, I look at it like I see what came out of Google I/O, and I saw what happened at SMX Advanced, the Search Marketing Expo, and what the speakers were talking about out of their own research studies. That, to me, when you pull that information together, gives you a clear indicator of where Google's headed. So for me, when I look at it, I see that Google is interested uh, in three primary things: sites
Oh, all of a sudden your sound went out, Todd.
I didn't go anywhere.
There we go.
I'm not going anywhere. You can't get rid of me. I'm
Try it
back
again.
for more.
Three things. I heard sites.
Kathy, Google's primarily interested in three things: site speed, mobile engagement, and content. And so I want to just give people a quick understanding of why those are Google's three pillars right now going forward. It's positioned for mobile because it's already seeing that that a significant percentage of their audience is and their users are engaging mobilely, which means you have to start adapting. This is a how do you make money from it? Because if you start adapting your user interface and start converting to HTML5 and making a mobile-friendly site with simple and intuitive navigation that can be used on your device and on your desktop, you will get advanced placement in Google if you have the right site speed. If your site speed's below, I think it's just south of 3 seconds, right around 2 to 3 seconds load speed, because they have such an emphasis on mobile engagement, a fast site speed will allow people to engage on their mobile devices, and that load will happen quickly so people can start using it on their device, and they're going to downgrade and are downgrading sites that load slowly. So those are the first two things, mobile and speed. And then the third thing is content. Google only indexes content. But what type of content gets the best results in a mobile platform or a desktop platform? And it's all video. So mobile speed video should be the future of where you're angling your business to if you want to be dominating inside of Google, and that's how you can profit from where Google is headed. Kathy, in your mind, on your areas of interest, where is Google headed? And with that information, how can people advance their business with it?
Well, I think we've already covered my end earlier when we were talking. But I think mobile is definitely a large focus. One of the things that I saw in an article that I forget where it came from that was talking about this was the emphasis. Actually, I think it was at the Google I/O conference itself when I was watching it online. They were emphasizing it's not one size fits all. We can't take a website and dummy it down for mobile, or take mobile and try to add other stuff to it. We have to have separate layouts. We have to take into account all those different mobile sites, not only because the size is different, but because the context is different. And that's one of the things that I think we have to think differently about is context. And Google really emphasized this. When people are on their phone, they're doing something different than when they're at their desk. When you're on your phone, you are mobile. You're moving. You're outside. You're going somewhere. You're doing something. You have a point to where you are and what you're doing, as opposed to being at a desk when you're at home. We also have the ability on phones to know what time it is. These are all things that really play into how we're communicating or how we should be communicating with people. And so we can't just have that one-size-fits-all. And I don't know exactly what that's going to mean in the future. I certainly don't have the wherewithal to have a fully separate mobile site and website and iPad site and all those other things. But we're going to have to get to a point where we have some of that we do.
Yeah, there are a lot of templates that are cross-platform that you can use. Now, I don't know if I'd recommend this for a hospital client, but I do think it's important that, like we were talking about with Healthcare.gov, that as you start to walk across the path of developing a new site, you start thinking about those three really important things, because everybody's in the business of discovery, especially in the healthcare space. You want to make sure that your rock star doctors are discovered when people start doing their research. You have to recognize when people get onto Google that Google's a supply-demand platform. That's all it is. When somebody gets onto Google and they start typing, they're demanding information. And if you supply that information under the right paths that Google's looking for, Google will make a love connection, like eHarmony, between the demand and your content supply. So you always want to be processing, how do you see where Google's headed. Google's a big ship, and once it starts to lay out big paths like this, it's really hard for them to turn, and they don't turn often. So look at this like a green light and start moving forward. but go through and make very sensible decisions as you're in that process.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are at the bottom of the hour and past, and it looks like today we have everybody is pretty busy. They have not been coming in to join us for the conversation. So rather than stretch this out an extra 15 minutes without all of the viewers, I have been reading your comments, by the way. We've had a lot of comments playing out on the event page while we've been talking. But let's just wrap it up here, because we have talked about our articles, and I know that if everyone is too busy to come in, then they're probably too busy to listen to us ramble on. And I'd like to save some of this for next week, because we'll have a whole nother bucket of topics to talk about, and I'll have some interesting guests that I can't wait to get on as well. And Todd, it was wonderful to get back with you and to share this spotlight with you.
Yeah, it really was. Kathy, thanks so much. Well, she's the amazing Kathy Brown from Brown Knows. You can find out information from Kathy right here on Google Plus or across multiple platforms. And it's a real honor to be here, Kathy, to spend some time to talk with you and to discuss what's happening in social media as it pertains to healthcare. So thank you so much for the invite again.
Well, and you're the amazing Todd Hartley with WireBuzz, and I appreciate you taking time to join me today. So this concludes today's episode of What's News in Healthcare Social Media with me, Kathy Brown, and special guest Todd Hartley, and we'll see you next week.